All right, so Mercedes, here's what we're really talking about here. We're talking about the fact that there is a cowardice that is coming over many Americans, a chill wind blowing, where people are afraid of losing their jobs, of being ostracized, of being targeted by the left. There's, as you're going to hear Candace Owens say in a moment, there's almost like a plague of confusion on one hand regarding what truth is, and cowardice on the other, which knows the truth and is reluctant to say it. So in the wake of all this white supremacy narrative, which of course serves the Democratic cause because white people are embarrassed and self-conscious about the accusation of being racist, and so they don't quite know how to respond. And this is a very cruel, blunt object being beating Americans over the head, which is a misuse of government authority at the maximum. So here's what we got. The news cycle loves to play, because the news cycle is working for the Democratic Party. This is one of my problems. I have friends of mine that say, well, I get a balanced look at news because I look at all the stations, which means CNN and NBC and ABC. They're all working for the Democrats. It's just a question of degree. So when you hear about the George Floyd verdict coming out, and the same day former police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of murdering George Floyd, a Columbus, Ohio officer shot and killed a 16-year-old black teen, Ma'Khia Bryant. There's a headline, another shooting, and it's going to be another premise, another victim. And so the pressure is on to try to sustain the experience so that the belief can be reinforced, so that more decisions can be made that dismantle American freedoms and prop up this narrative of America's fundamental systemic sin that it can't get rid of, which is racism, which is a lie. So here's something that's interesting. There is a pushback. The media knows its credibility is so sucky that it's like in the 20 percentile. That sure, you got your liberal wild people over here that watch their steady diet of CNN, but there's a small ratings pool compared to, like, say, Fox, which is hitting the other side of the story. But what I want you to catch now is we're putting pressure on these stations and on these outlets to tell the truth. And so you're going to start to see them doing fact-checking on themselves to make it look like they're objective. Watch this piece here, which really surprised me because it was CNN and two of my favorite cast of characters for deceptive news practice, which is, we got Lemon and Cuomo. Let's hear it.
We've got to be honest about these things. And if we're not honest about these things as journalists, then it is a dereliction of our duty as journalists. It's journalistic malpractice not to do it.
Well, I heard some people were reporting on the incident without showing the knife.
Yeah, you got to show all of it.
Is malpractice.
Yeah. And again,
that's looking for trouble.
It's tough.
And that's wrong.
But this is where we are right now, and everyone is emotional, and I understand it, but we have to do our due diligence, and we've got to talk about these things.
Malpractice. So, Mercedes, the malpractice here was that in NBC's version of the video highlight of the knife, they noted that the body camera footage shows a knife on the ground. They could have highlighted, as the other channels did, circle the picture that there is a young woman being assaulted with a knife, potentially murdered with a knife. And I think Don Lemon put it brilliantly. When they want to do it right, they do it well. It's like Bill Maher. Once out of, one every 10 times he says something, that makes sense. And it's like, oh, it was a great quote. So what Don Lemon said is, imagine that it was your daughter in a pink dress that was about to be stabbed. Do you want that police officer to be able to do their job and stop the murder? Or do you want them to not do that? So he said, just change the scenario. So you see how the way you believe the experience, the way you interpret it, can be affected by the teacher or by the newscaster. The reality is NBC did not do the integrous job because they were tilting towards the narrative. The other stations came out in an unusual moment and actually publicly exonerated the police officer for the decision to act because the knife was clearly ready to be employed. So, what do you think about that, Mercedes? And by the way, you sent me a meme. Tell me about this this video clip, because I thought it was hysterical. I didn't know it was doctored up. So tell me the story with this.
Yeah, well, it's really funny, but I want to go back to what we were just talking about because I have comments on that. One is I love this idea that we covered in the first segment of the belief pyramid, because what they're trying to reinforce, the new belief is that America is divided. America is racist. And they're trying to divide us by identity politics. And so anything from, income, sex, right, gender, and especially race. And, and I mean, Lance, you've said stuff like this before, too, where it's like, I mean, we elected a black president. How can America be incredibly racist when we have...
Twice.
Yeah, Lance is saying twice. Exactly. It's trying to create a new narrative in my mind that's not there. And I don't negate the fact that there are places in America and people who are definitely still racist. But what it was 20, 30, 10 years ago, it's like every day is getting better. Every day things are changing. And so to have a narrative here of reporting inaccurately, like you're saying, NBC, not as truthful as they could be, so much so that CNN needs to correct you. I mean, gosh, you're doing something wrong when CNN's correcting you. And then the only thing I want to hit before we get to that meme, Lance, we have the video. I don't know if you heard about it. I didn't hear about it. But I dug it up. And so this, to me, is not only are they reporting to create new experiences, but they're not reporting on the things that are happening. And this is in Oklahoma. There were BLM protesters that went into the Capitol building. There was about 24 of them, and they started shouting, "We will use our voices to stand up against corruption. No justice, no peace." And Lance, they're protesting about not doxing officers' information. Okay, so don't dox people. Apparently, they're protesting against that. And then also a bill that the House and Senate are putting forward in Oklahoma that increases the penalties for people who block traffic, and also protects drivers who unintentionally strike the pedestrians with their car. Well, don't stand in the middle of the interstate, And so that's so terrible that we have this clip that they themselves are in there creating an insurrection. But did you hear about it? Because I didn't. We can play it, Frank. So, yeah, I didn't hear about this, Lance. I don't know if you did. That's probably good there.
Yeah, well, and once again, the deception here is, remember Governor Walker had 100,000 protesters when he was trying to work out the budget in Wisconsin, and they stormed the Capitol. And there were unions that stormed and occupied, and the education union. And they literally stormed into the Capitol. And kind of like the question that Tucker asked of Kamala Harris, not Kamala.
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. Slight difference there. The Candace Owens is, I still want to see that Kamala Harris video thing.
I know. We got
we'll get to it because I just want to get it in here. But he asked this question, and it's a profound question. He says, why are there 300 Trump people still behind bars when you have instantaneous free pass of Antifa and BLM rioters that are destroying property and burning down buildings, and within 24 hours they're out? I saw that at the inauguration of Trump. Nobody wanted to cover the story. Antifa had lawyers traveling with them. You know what I'd love to see? The financial audit of who's paying who. Like with those people protesting there. All right, so they go in there. What are they paid per hour to do that? And then what I want to know is who's paying them? See, this would be with the American. This is what 80 million of us want to know. I just want to know, are they really spontaneously walking in off the street in a sense of public outrage? Or is this not orchestrated, synchronized swimming where they're all saying the same thing? And then they got the media coverage. You know why they have to do this? They've got $2 billion of corporate funding they have to spend. Every nonprofit knows if you don't spend it, they're not going to send you any more money. So they've got to spend this. The corporations are paying for the terrorizing of American citizens and the disruption of political institutions. Look at it that way, and it'll be a real awakening. There's your wake-up call.
Definitely. All right, let's play, Lance, let's get this clip in of Candace. We've got 2 minutes left, and this is a 1-minute clip. And Candace outlines perfectly, like what Lance was just talking about, what is happening to our movement and what we need to see a resurgence of. So let's play the clip, Frank.
Let's take 3 steps back and acknowledge that only one side behaves this way. I mean, a jury in 1995 concluded that O.J. Simpson, despite DNA evidence, hadn't murdered 2 people, and there were no riots. But more to the point, there are a lot of people sitting behind, Trump voters sitting behind bars right now, have been for months, charged effectively with trespassing. We're not speculating. We've seen the charges. No Republican in the Congress stands up for them. Nobody mentions that. Nobody, is for prison reform when it's their political enemies. That's not equal justice, but nobody says it. Why is that?
Because we have 2 pandemics going on right now. There's a pandemic of ignorance in this country, and that is only allowed to fly because we also have a pandemic of cowardice in this country, okay? So we have people that are purposefully putting out a bunch of ignorant claims, and then we have people that are too cowardly to stand up and say, you know what, this is wrong. There has been so much that has been going on in this country that is wrong. You talk about it, I talk about it, but we do not have people that are sitting in Congress that are willing to take this fight where it needs to be taken.
Powerful.
So here's the other side of this. Now catch this. We have the belief pyramid, right? You got your experiences, create your beliefs. You see how powerful freedom of speech is, people? Do you see why you've got to thank God for America and why you've got to show up and why it is so, it's so strange to see even people that have pulpits and freedom right now blathering on and bloviating about irrelevant subject matter when the preservation of your own freedom of speech should be the one thing you need, because Candace Owens lit a fire with that one segment, and she created a new belief system for people that needed the truth. We're going to be back with more of this in a moment. You don't want to miss a second of this program.
Lance Wallnau has just released his latest book, God's Chaos Code.
You need to know the code. You need to know what's happening right now. There is a code in the chaos. There's a purpose in the shaking. Once you see this, it's going to give stability and strength to you. God is literally raising up an awakening generation right now. It's hidden in the code.
You need to know the code. Order God's Chaos Code now at godschaoscode.com.
Real America's Voice is a news platform dedicated to keeping people informed. Hear Dr. Gina's take on current events during prime time.
It's time to stand up and speak the truth.
Get Jenna Ellis's legal perspective on just the truth.
Our government has absolutely no power to do most of what it's doing today.
End your day with a laugh with Live from Studio 6B.
Do it the way only you can do it, Joe.
Real America.